when you're young, you should just go, 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 fail, 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 fail. Like nothing can kill you at 20 or 21 or 22 or 23 or 24 or 16 or whatever. Just go, because every mistake you make, the sooner you make it, you probably won't make that one again. And so you really should be like a mistake making machine.
Welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast show. On today's podcast, we are joined by the one and only David Osborn, real estate investor, entrepreneur, and author of Wealth Can't Wait. David has built one of the largest real estate brokerages in the world and is co-founder of GoBundance, something that we are all members of, a mastermind community for driven entrepreneurs. His passion extends beyond business, as he is a dedicated philanthropist, family man, and speaker, helping others achieve financial freedom and personal growth. David's journey from humble beginnings to financial independence is a powerful story of perseverance and vision. Welcome, David, to the 0 to 100 podcast show.
Thanks, Gabe. Great to be with you, my friend. Been a while.
Yeah, it has been. It has been a while, actually. I feel like I used to see you quite a bit, and it's been a little while.
Yeah, I've really committed to my family and my kids, and this precious moment in life while my kids are still little, and appreciate it more now than I ever have before. So I've been dedicating a lot of time to that journey.
How old are your kids now, David?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a 7-year-old little boy. I got a 15-year-old girl, and then I got a 36-year-old girl who has a grandbaby. So I'm a granddad. The grandbaby is 3 months old. And I feel like I've appreciated each child more the older I've gotten. My first one suffered from my negligence and my ambition and my lack of attention to her early. And I definitely feel like I was pretty much absent for a long time in her life. And then my second one, I spent a lot more time with. And then my third one, I spent even more with. You just start appreciating how quickly it goes and how, if you're lucky enough to have that time, how important that time is.
Let's get into that a little bit, actually. I mean, one thing I've always appreciated about you is just your openness, your authenticness. Sharing that, in those early, with your oldest child, you were, pursuing your dreams and your vision of building a real estate empire, building the real estate brokerage. So that's something I appreciate about you. Let's go back to that time, kind of those early years, even before you got into real estate. Maybe your childhood, what that was like.
Military father. We moved 10 times before I was 14. He was a Green Beret colonel, so he was pretty intense. And it was hopping around. So always the new kid at every school. Some of that movement was my own fault, because once I got to America, I was raised in Germany and England on military bases, military schools. And then when I got to America, I was a little bit of a rebel without a clue. So I talked back a lot. I was I wasn't really afraid of adults. I was only afraid of my father. So I got thrown out of 3 high schools. So that led to the number. That's why I went to so many high schools. And, and actually between age 13, coming back from England to America, going to a school here, getting thrown out of 3 schools, leaving another school, graduating high school and going to college. I think I went to 8 schools in 4 years, just in that little window.
Did you say you got thrown out of 3 schools?
Yeah, I got thrown out of 3 schools. Yes. Or uninvited. They're private schools, so it's a little easier to get, just one of them let me finish the year. Two of them let me finish the year, but said I couldn't come back. And then the other one, after a month, they were just like, "You're out, get out."
These guys have been trying to uninvite me from this podcast every week, and I keep coming back.
You're sticking around.
I keep changing the link. He keeps finding us. So when you would go home and tell your dad, "Hey, Dad, I was uninvited from another school," how did that go over?
My dad was a really tough man. The first one I got kicked out of, he kind of stood by me, because I got kicked out because some kids asked me to say they saw me in chapel. It had been brewing, but the final thing was kids said, "Say you saw us in chapel." So I said, "Hey, I saw him in chapel." And then they, of course, were like, "No, we weren't in chapel." So then I was caught in the lie.
Oh, no.
And then my dad was like, "Well, I always taught my son to stand up for his friends, and that's okay by me because he's a soldier, right?" So that one was more bad on them. And then the second one, they let me finish the year, and he just let me find another school. But the third one, when he picked me up, he just cried. And he never cried. He picked me up and he was just crying in the car. I was like, "Damn, this is bad."
That's even more impactful than yelling, probably.
Yeah, it probably was. It probably was. Kind of straightened me out a little bit after that. I was like, maybe I should try a little bit harder.
So military background, David, that's not an entrepreneurial background, right? We're all military.
Oh, very cool.
And
Yeah.
Love that.
Gabe was Army. Mitch was in this thing called the Navy. We're still trying to figure that out. And I was Air Force. So, yeah. No, but that's not it's very, it can be argued. Maybe Green Beret, not necessarily, but it's structured, it's corporate. So what happened? I was reading your bio, you went on a walkabout, you traveled the world a little bit. You seemed like you were a bit of a wayward soul. It looks like you made it. It sounded like you might've made it through college. So take us through how you go from cause you were like a mega entrepreneur, you own companies. This guy is the most successful person we've had on the podcast thus far, hands down. And not just success measured in financial, but like you said, family, genuine contribution, the whole 9 yards. But how did you transition from being a wayward soul, getting to college, traveling the world, to thinking, you know what, I want to go build an empire and become an entrepreneur? I'd love you to take us through college and into your earlier years and your mindset behind that.
But it probably has to go a little bit further back. So when I was living in England, I was going to basically a military school. So this is 7 to 13, and it was a boarding school with corporal punishment. So if we misbehaved, we got beat. It was kind of similar to my home life. If I misbehaved, I got beat. So my dad was definitely very old school. But my dad was based in Germany, but he put me in an English school, and we lived on my uncle's ranch, Uncle Ted, great Uncle Ted. And my mom was the poor leg of a wealthy family. So my granny was dirt poor, lived off of basically charity, but her brother, great Uncle Ted, was super wealthy. And he had the country farm, and he was a stockbroker on Wall Street, or I'm an English one, which is the LIFE, the London Stock Exchange, whatever they call that. And we lived on his gamekeeper's cottage. He just let us use it. So they would come there, stay there. And my school was 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away, something like that. They would just let me go there. And I remember having Turkey Day at his house. In England, it's Guy Fawkes Day, so they don't do Thanksgiving, but they still had Turkey Day. And he would have this head table where all the adults sat. He was at the head of the table, and then all the kids, and 50 people in his big house on this big hill on this farm that was 70 acres in Marley Heights, which in England, that's quite a lot. So I was just looking up to him. I was like, okay, this guy seems to be the guy. And he was always kind to me. He was always calm. He even said to me, if you ever need any help or advice, I'd be happy to give it to you. He gave me some of my first jobs, getting eggs out from under chickens, which is actually scary when you're 13. I know it sounds like a small thing, but they are
little dinosaurs.
Cleaning up his yard and doing yard work. And he just treated me fair. And I was I think something in my brain, because my older brother was kind of the athlete. My older sister was aggressive as heck, but more just had a temper and would drive. And I'm the baby. And I'm like, wait a second, this guy gets all the respect in the world. He helps people, he supports people, and he seems to have a lot of money. So I think that's
beat me.
Huh?
And he doesn't beat me.
Yeah, he doesn't beat me. Yeah. He's always offering help. So I looked at that, and then I was like, okay, I started processing what his life was like. And that was like a role model for me. And then I went to America, got back to America, and I hated school. I was getting kicked out of schools, but I always had jobs. I liked working. I was a bagger, and then I was a landscape guy working on a landscape crew. And then I just started my own lawn mowing company. So when I was 17, I started a lawn mowing company, and I made 20 grand that year living at home. This is 1980 something, 80, I don't remember, 85, maybe 86. And so 20 grand back then, I ran the numbers like making 60 grand today. I mean, if you run it by inflation. So it was a pretty good amount of cash. It's all cash. I didn't pay sales tax. I didn't know any better. I wasn't trying to be a rebel there. I just didn't know any better. I didn't really pay any taxes. Now I did have expenses. So that's the gross number. And I bought a truck and I bought lawn equipment. So it wouldn't have been a net that, but it was good. And I felt good about that. I felt empowered. In fact, I told my dad, I want to just build my lawn mowing company. And he said, son, you can either go to college, join the Marines, or get that GTFO. Right. So give me those options. And I was like, well, I'm not quite ready to run my lawn mowing business without a house to live in, because free rent is good. So I chose to go to college. So I think all along I had this equation of money equals freedom. If I have money, I don't got to answer to anybody. And by the way, I did go see a Marine recruiter. We have a lot of soldiers, 7 generations of soldiers in my family, fought in every war until the Gulf War. And then it stopped because I didn't join up. But I didn't like to take orders anymore. I remember that Marine recruiter, he just felt so false and full of crap. And he just didn't feel like he cared about me one bit. And I just wasn't ready to take any more orders. So, I went to work in a sales company. My first job was door-to-door sales. So even though I was this crappy student all through college, and what I did is I went to college, but to show my dad, I failed all my classes the first year. So I was also a big weed smoker. So from 15 to 20, I smoked a bunch of weed. I wasn't really that organized. I just liked work. There was like one thing I liked, and that was working. For some reason, that always appealed to me. Authority didn't appeal to me. I couldn't answer well. Anyone that treated me badly, I would mouth off to them. I just didn't, even if they weren't treating me badly, they were just trying to get me to like fall in line. I'd be like, I was just a smart ass. I don't really, I look back at it, I'm like, man, you had a chip on your shoulder. But then I go do door-to-door computer sales, and that's fine and well. That was 1 year. And I was good at it. I was brave. I would walk into a building and just walk up to the girl and be like, hey, what a pretty dress you have today. Who's in charge of purchasing? Like, you learn how to be very charming, like puppy dog sale is what I used to call it. And then they taught us some techniques there, Dale Carnegie, and like how to uncover objections and bury the objections. And that was all great and well too. So again, I'm finding my way a little bit through work. But then my boss is female. She's married and she wants to screw me, right? So I got like suddenly this Me Too movement in reverse, where I've got this 35-year-old woman. I'm like 23 or something. And she's putting all this pressure on me at work to have sex. We didn't have any like resources for that back then. Eventually at a Christmas party, I kind of came, I broke down and went ahead and, we did it. It was great because it was in the office of the owner. It was like kind of fun, like it was kind of wild. But I remember the next like, a week later, I saw her husband. I just felt like an asshole. I'm like, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not going to bang your wife. I'm not going to have sex with your wife. I just don't believe in that. Like, it's against my morals, even though I did it. I'm aware of the hypocrisy, but
not again. You mean not again?
Not again. Thank you. Yeah.
Very few times if I did.
Very few times.
Right
Yeah.
But then I told her, no more, we're done. This is never happening again. To be fair, I was drunk and there was a whole story behind it. It was very seductive on her part to kind of lure me in there, but it worked. And so she started putting all this pressure on me. Like, if you don't get me 40 reviews, she just like amped it up, like typical sexual harassment in hindsight.
Man, she's evil. That is awful.
I think she wanted me out of there because it was probably.
This is going a very different direction than I would have anticipated.
Yeah. No, I love this direction. Keep the train on the tracks.
So then I was like, my best friend always hitchhiked around the world, and he was 1 year behind me, and his family had this tradition, and he asked me to go with him, and I said, no, I want to work. I want to build a career. But because it was going so sideways, I was like, okay, I'm going to go with you. I said, I'll go with you around the world. We'll go around the world for a year. I'll move back home. I'll save all my money, sell all my possessions, and we'll go hitchhiking around the world. So that's how I ended up like on what was supposed to be a 1 year sabbatical ended up becoming 2 years and a quarter because that job was so bad. So in reality, and you'll see this thread through all of our lives, I'm sure, but mine as well, especially, like everything bad that seems to happen to you turns into something good. And for me, those 2 years hitchhiking around the world turned me into the man I am today. Like, it just showed me living on $20 a day, the kindness of strangers, the amount of people that let you sleep on their couch, the number of people that are just there for you. There's just good people out there. Yeah, it was amazing.
I mean,
I had no money. I came back I left 150 pounds. I came back 135 pounds. I literally wasn't eating. And then I fell in love with a girl out there, and that's a whole other story. But at the end of the day, I came back from that a new man, a different human, like a better human. And that was kind of it. And then I got into real estate sales with my mom. I came back and I tried to go back into tech sales. And when I got a job with Novell Systems selling technology, and they had me sign this contract that said anything I thought of, dreamed of, or came up with outside of work belonged to them. So it was like this screw you contract. And I was like, screw you, I'm not doing this, which is dumb as hell because I had minus $1,500 to my net worth. I was a C student. I wasn't likely to dream up the next iPhone or anything like that, but it felt so oppressive to me. I said, screw you, I'm out. And which is funny because there's a parallel to what's going on in my life now. And I went to work with my mom temporarily while I looked for a real job, and that was real estate. And then I put a couple guys in my car that I used to know, and we sold a house. I made $5,000. I got to hang out with them and drink beer, and I thought, wow, this isn't really a job. This is easy. This is just hanging out with my friends and selling them houses. So that for 3 years, I got heavily into residential real estate. But it was always I just liked working. Even when I did real estate, like I remember like trying to see how many days I could go without taking a day off, just like really pushing my energy hard. And then I also began to fall in love with learning because when you're in sales, if you know the right scripts, you get the outcomes, right? You know, whether you put people first or not is up to you. I always put people first. So I had this natural kind of integrity and sort of, except for the moment with my boss who was married, give me a little forgiveness on that. I have kind of a high level of integrity, but I'm definitely not perfect. And then I also genuinely care about people. I genuinely like people, but the scripts help. Like it helps people make decisions and keep their minds focused. So then I became addicted to learning. I'm like, if I learn the right script and I apply it enough times, I'm going to get sales. And when I get sales, I get money. And My mom and I went on to be the number one team in Keller Williams 3 years later, which 750,000 in GCI. I think when I joined her, she was doing 400. So it's not like it wasn't already kind of there for me just to take advantage of.
So can we talk about David, how you transitioned from selling a couple houses a year, drinking beers with your friend, to building one of the largest real estate brokerages in the world? Like, how did those first 3 years with your mom, like, what did that look like? And how did you go from this casual selling a few homes and entering a commission to actually building one of the largest brokerages?
Even when I had a lawn mowing company, I ended up having 3 trucks. So like something in me wanted to expand early, and also like understanding leverage. So after the 3rd year, I remember specifically on the 3rd year, I was driving down the same street for the 3rd time on the same day with my 3rd set of clients saying the same thing. And I was like, okay, this sucks now, because I am not a tape recorder. I don't want to just say the same stuff over and over again. Although there's a lot of that in life. So it's actually not, now I look in hindsight, it's not that bad. But at that moment, I was like, I just don't want to keep doing this. Keller Williams was expanding very fast then. And my mother had invested in a region called the North Texas, New Mexico region. And it wasn't going very well. In fact, when I first came back from traveling around the world, she kind of had shingles from stress. They were threatening to take it away from her. And so she was stressed. So after 3 years, the CEO of the company was a girl called Mo Anderson. And she just started pouring into me, just a wonderful woman, amazing human. And he said, why don't you move to Dallas and start opening franchises? Because that's what you have to do, is open franchises. So I just said, okay. So I'm sick of selling real estate, and we've hit number 1 in the company. I'm just going to go up to Dallas and start opening franchises. So that's what I did. And that became the journey of from I do it to we do it. And I think, at first it's all about you and the skills you have as a human. And that is script. It's like energy management. It's, integrity. It's like whatever you think it is that bundles up into getting the outcome you want with what you're trying to do. And then the second piece becomes how to build a business. So now all of a sudden my job is to sell franchises, but I suck at selling them. I can't sell them. I'm not very good at it because I'm young. I'm 20. How much was I? 29 years old. But I'm good at like getting enough people excited to where I had to buy the franchise to keep my development. You have when you buy a region, you have a development schedule. And if you keep selling enough franchises, you get to own you get to develop it and own it allegedly forever. But if you fail to develop it, they take it back and sell it to somebody else to develop it. So I would get people excited. I couldn't get them to buy the franchise. So I just bought one. And then I bought another one. I ended up buying like 6 just because of that reason, because I couldn't find one person willing, because it is risky. Buying a franchise is risky. But to me, it wasn't risk because I was young and stupid and didn't know any better. And, I hadn't failed in a big way. So I wasn't scared of it.
How do you buy these franchises in your 20s? Like financially, how do you do? Is it like, is there
well,
debt?
Back then, I was very lucky because it was a very young company. They were desperate for growth. Nowadays, they've made it way harder. The hurdles you have to jump through to buy a franchise today are way harder. Back then, there were no hurdles. Like you could just buy one. So I would buy one and it was 18 grand and that was it. I'd write a check for 18 grand. And back at the beginning, that's all they cared about is that they got their 18 grand. And so I wouldn't do it unless I had 4 or 5 agents excited. And then they started raising the standard and said, okay, you got to have 20 agents committed. You got to show you have access to 150 grand. But I opened my first one with they just sold it to me. And then the second one with a little bit more rules and the third one with a little bit more rules. And remember, because we own the region, we were also in charge of recommending who got to buy it. And then you've got a company that's desperate for adding people. Today, they make you show you've got 300,000 in the bank and all these other things that they didn't make us do back then. But so I started opening these franchises and then I took over some that were failing because we had like 4 in the region already. That was it total. And 2 of them were failing. I remember one guy was dealing drugs out of the office, dealing cocaine. Another one of my owners was like threatening agents. He was pretty good he was charming and charismatic, but when he got pissed, he was like, I'm going to throw you, Travis, out that window if you don't get the F out of here. And it's not good to build a real estate company unless you just get a bunch of abused agents that want to continue to be abused. So basically, I had to take over 2. I started 4, eventually 6. So I have 6 now. And I'm starting to realize I'm beyond my capacity to manage these businesses. Like one person can't do it. When I had 1, I could just go in every day and work. And I would assemble the computers and build the cubicles and paint the walls and recruit the agents and hire the manager, whatever needed to be done. I was doing it all. And at the same time, Keller Williams was growing. So they were learning and they were teaching and training. So I had this like convergence of a young company that needs growth that's also ambitious. And they start teaching and taught me a lot. And and then I began to notice as I had 6, this is kind of when I had a nervous breakdown. So at 31, late 30, I kind of had an identity crisis, and I got shingles from stress. And I kind of almost had a nervous breakdown. But in hindsight, I realized it was an identity crisis, meaning that who I wasn't who I needed to be to get the outcome I needed from these businesses. The guy that just works and works and works and works and tries to do everything himself is not the person that can run what I run today. If I had a choice, I broke down. I tried to quit, but I also did a bunch of work with a bunch of coaches and a bunch of breakthrough seminars and stuff like that. And I basically reinvented myself as a human being, and I came out as a different person. And the different person that I came out as was capable of running all the offices. And so as that new person, I quit doing anything unimportant towards the goals that I had. So I literally went from a guy that did my list of 20 things in order that I wrote them down to a guy that would take the list of 20 things, identify the 3 most important and only do those. And then the next day, the 20 things and only do the 3. Next day, 10. The list gets smaller and smaller when you realize that you just got to do the high priority things. When I was in college, if I had to study, I'd try to do everything else. I'm going to clean my apartment, do my laundry, I do this before studying because I didn't want to study. But in business, if you want results, you just take that hardest thing on first. Recruiting people was the number one thing for me. So just making calls, and recruiting people. And that transformation, which sounds simple, was about an 8-month transformation. Very painful, borderline suicidal. I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but I just was wrecked internally. And then I made it through the other side. It's like the dark night of the soul. That's why when people say, I'd love to have your success, I'm like, you might want my success, but I'm not sure you'd want to go through exactly what I went through to get to that level of success.
I have a question, why or what makes you different though? Because obviously, you're a humble guy, but your success today, what you do today, you're different. That's all there is to it. You're special, you're different, you do things. And part of that, I recognize that 31 years old, yeah, you got shingle is very unhealthy in a lot of ways, but a lot of it was really healthy. In other words, the outcome was really healthy. So I'm just curious, can you identify what that is? Because I see so many people all of their life, they just pound their head against the wall. They can't get past a ma pa shop or owning 3 or 4 rentals. And it's just, there's never that moment of self-awareness where they're I got to reinvent myself. Is there something in your past, a mentor, an experience? What gave you that self-awareness to say, man, I got to reinvent? What was that?
I'll give you 2 theories. I don't know for sure, but I will tell you this. First, I want to hit something important. So before I get to the why, let's go to some philosophies I have. Number 1 is why not me? I believe God wants people to be massively successful, healthy, and there's got to be that in life. Of course, there's losers and failures and drug addicts too, but I don't want to be that. So I'm why not me stepping into the highest level of success possible? And then the second thing is being willing to shed what doesn't serve that why not me higher purpose goal. So being willing to shed the parts of yourself that get in the way of achieving that level of success, which is the transformation you're talking about. And then I think the third thing, and that shedding requires not being too attached to the structures that you've built. Because what worked in building my sales career did not work in building my businesses. So in my sales careers, work as hard as you can. Learn scripts. Yes, that did work in business too. Work ethic. Yes, that helps. Set goals. Yes, that helps. But what doesn't work is just work. In sales, you can just keep working, man, and you can get more sales and make more money. You can work 12, 20 hours a day, 15 hours a day, whatever it takes, 7 days a week. And you're definitely going to make more money because you're working twice as hard as anybody else. But in business, at some point, it's just not enough. If you're scaling to a massive scale, Bill Gates cannot go into Microsoft and move the needle of that business by his work ethic, nor can Warren Buffett. So, and in a way, working that hard can be distracting from doing the most important things that actually get you there. And in the case of running real estate franchise, it's hiring really good managers and paying attention to what they're doing so that they thrive inside of the franchise they're running for you. So that's what I mean by being able to shed. You got to use an idea till a point and then shed that idea when it doesn't serve you. So why not me, shed? And then the third one, I think the third one goes back to sort of it's like surrendering constantly to the ability of something else to show up. It's similar to shedding, really. It's just not being attached to where you are, who you are, not being attached to the insecurities you have. Here's another one, not attached to the insecurities, not attached to your doubts. You just realize they come like clouds in the sky. It's kind of meditative, I guess, but you're going to have these doubts. You're going to have imposter syndrome. You're going to have all these thoughts and you just kind of let them flow through. You don't hold on to them too much. And I still practice that to this day. But then going back to the why, maybe moving 10 times before I'm 14, maybe military, maybe having an oppressive father and not wanting to be like, I remember my dad, and I love my dad. He was a great man. He was a warrior. He's a Green Beret, fought in Vietnam. He'd have fought his whole life. He said to me one time, there's nothing like being on the battlefield, son. You should go join during Gulf War. He said, you should sign up right now. There's nothing like being on the battlefield.
My dad said, if this ever happens, go to Canada. He was a Marine in Vietnam. He's like, go to Canada. So it's different philosophy. Hey, I love that you said, don't be attached to your insecurities. I can relate to this personally because like, you know, you have a lot of success. I exited a company and then I made some bad investments with some bad people, right?
So common, by the way, so common that entrepreneurs will make stupid investment decisions. We think everyone's like us and we're excited to see them succeed. So we throw money at stupid stuff all the time, like constantly.
Well, so these guys, anyway, yeah. So I've spent the last 2 years kicking myself. Like maybe I'm not as smart because I did make great investments after I sold the company, but then I made some really bad ones. And what I've learned from me, I have to literally have amnesia. I have to just look forward. How do I solve the problem? I can't dwell because I got really insecure about that. And I love that you said that because like, if you're going to be in the arena kicking ass and taking risks and doing things, you're going to have failures. Like at least it's inevitable. Right. And
there's no winning without losing.
Right.
If you want to win, you have to be prepared to lose.
So do you find yourself now, like you're at a level that most people could only dream of, but like you still make mistakes? Do you find do you cope that way too? Like learn from the mistake, but don't get emotionally attached to it and then problem solve going forward?
I think it's just surrender, man. That's that third one that I'm trying to put in words for you. The third piece is surrender to God. Like whatever your religion is, like I'm definitely not in management. So I'm not going to tell you whether one religion is better than another one. But for me, I surrender to God, and because I believe God says, why not you? God wants somebody to show up at a big level. Now, I'm even willing to accept God could be a construct that's bigger, just like a way for people to let go. But I can tell you, when you hold on to stuff, you get limited and shaped by that. When I'm holding this can, my hand is now shaped by this can. If you hold on to failure, you're going to get shaped by failure. If you hold on to success, you'll be shaped by your success. If you let go, you create space for something new to emerge through you. And so that's kind of a surrender submission piece that I try to let go constantly. And in the movie, A Beautiful Mind, if you remember that movie, it's a great movie. And it's a movie that has a device. By the way, I listened to Joe Rogan the other day and he had that actor on. Who was that actor? The guy from Beautiful Mind and from Gladiator, Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe is talking about this movie. He says there's a device, but I've always talked about this movie. He says there's a device. At the beginning of the movie, you think this is actually happening. And then suddenly you realize, oh my God, I'm just in the mind of a crazy person, right? But at the end of the movie, he gets a Nobel Prize. The crazy people that he saw, like he's, what do they call, schizophrenic, they haven't gone. They're still there. He just doesn't pay attention to them anymore. He walks right past them to go collect his Nobel Prize, but they're still like, hey, and he just ignores them. And they're crazy because they're not really there. And that's what I think you have to do. Your insecurities, they never go away. You just turn the volume down and you're like, I'm not going to pay attention. I know you're there. I recognize this. I recognize this anxiety, this nervous feeling, this self-doubt, this feeling of unworthiness. I'm just going to turn the volume down. Thank you for reminding me that I'm human, but I'm going to go on towards surrender and what's possible.
Well, and I also love that you say, why not me? We actually put that in our book, in the mindset section of our book, 0 to 100 Units, by the way, which you gave us a review. Thank you very much. But we and I think Pete Carroll said that to the young Seattle Seahawks team. I lived in Seattle. Like, why not you? Why not us? And I think people need to ask themselves that every single day. And I love that you echo that. I think that's really important.
Yeah, why not? And somebody's got to be amazingly successful and beautiful and handsome and have wonderful sex and great wives and all the rest of it. So why not me?
Someone's got to do it.
David, you
count me in.
You said something at a small event that I was at. I think it was at your house in Colorado years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. You said something along the lines of, if you're not slightly embarrassed by who you were 10 years ago, you're probably not growing.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't even remember who was interviewing you, but that had really stuck with me. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
You know, it's funny because then I come up, right? I'm opening all these franchises and I'm just so astonished by this now because at 57, I'm really committed to my health. In fact, I'm really leaning into vegetarianism, more Gabe as well. So you'll be happy to know that. But when I was coming up, it's so interesting because here I'm pushing out this energy, working as hard as I can to build all these franchises. You know how I blow off energy? You know how I cope? I go drinking. Like, this is how I would cope. So I'm working 10, 12 hours a day. Then I go drink with agents. I stay up extra late. I think I'm having fun, eating too much food and just getting drunk, basically, or not crazy drunk, but definitely over drinking. And then I go to sleep. Then I get up and work the whole day the next day. And then on the weekends, when I get a chance to like recover, do I recover? No, I go drink more, or I go like out with my buddies or my girlfriend at the time. We used to drink a bottle of wine almost every day. And I'm thinking to myself, what's crazy about that is for 15 years I did that, like working as hard as I could and then thinking I'm recovering by actually harming my body, which is crazy, right? That's embarrassing to think about. Like today, I am super attentive to the body. I do the sauna, the cold plunge. I eat very carefully. I usually intermittent fast. I'm barely drinking alcohol, although I haven't cut it out completely. There's so many things that I eat clean. I pay attention. I have the Yuka app on my phone so I can scan food to see what's in it, whether it's got additives, the same with our shampoo and everything else. And I feel great. I work out all the time and I do yoga and I have an amazing energy level. And I just can't believe how I did it for 15 years that way. It just seems so embarrassing and unhealthy. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. Is there anything today that you think in 10 years, 15 years, you're going to look back on and be like, why the hell was I doing that?
Probably. I mean, I've got some conflict with one of my largest businesses, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on this call, but basically I feel like they're being bullies and a-holes, and I'm about to go right at them as hard as I can. I might win, I might lose. I'm not afraid of losing, so I'm willing to try to win. And it's going to be ugly. And I think part of me is like, somebody asked me the other day, what will you think about this when you're on your deathbed? I'm like, I probably won't even remember it. So here I am kind of wrapped up in a battle. And I'm not taking it too heavy because I'm wiser and it's not like an existential thing for me. I'm just mad and I don't like bullies. I don't like being bullied and they're killing the culture of the company and I'm going to go at them really hard. And I think in 10 years, I'll probably look back and go like, you should just given them the keys to the car and said, it's yours. You can have it. You know what I mean? It is a $50 million swing one way or the other, but
just 50. It's dropping.
But I still think it's like, is it the right thing to do to fight as hard as I am? But I did pray on it. I went out in the desert when I was at Burning Man and, God told me very clearly that you should fight. So I'm taking him up on that.
I would not want to be on the other side of that barrel, that metaphorical barrel. So David, we're a real estate show. You're a real estate guy. So far you've talked about building businesses. I love that you've mentioned learning sales skills. I think that's absolutely critical. If you're raising capital, you're starting businesses, you're obviously selling door to door. I do really quick though on the leverage, and you talked about leverage because I didn't want to gloss over this. I did put a star next to this. How the hell do you make $20,000, which is $60,000 a day in high school? Was it just you mowing that many lawns or did you have a little scale built into the business? You have some employees?
Yeah, I had 3 trucks. I started with 1 truck and then I had a network through, my mom was a real estate agent. So I would go to all the realtors. I'd say, I want to cut all your homes. I started doing punch lists. I hired a plumber. He wasn't licensed. I paid for him to get his license. He was an ex-meth head actually. But he was recovered and he was really wrapped up tight, but I got him through plumbing school. So he was an officially licensed plumber. We started doing foundation work. We started putting in plumbing and then he stole all my tools in the truck that I bought him. I was so naive back then. I bought him a $500 truck and I'm like, let's just put it straight in your name. You can still pay me back, but that way we won't have to go down to the courthouse twice. So he didn't really steal it. I guess I bought it for him. Just assuming. And then the first time I took some money out of his paycheck, he just disappeared. He ghosted me with the truck and all the tools.
And then he does some more meth. So I love, okay, that's because there might be some, because we always teach people to like start businesses in high school, learn business. And I wanted, if people are listening, I want them to stop and the takeaway there is scale, learn how to build leverage in your business. We talk about that a lot. So now you've built these franchises, you've reinvented yourself, you're understanding how to sort of accomplish things that are the most important. You're building scale and leverage in your business. How did you start? Like, tell us about your real estate investing career. When did you start buying properties? I know you guys kind of went on a tear, like in the post sort of great recession world, but like, tell us a little bit more how you scaled your real estate portfolio and what that looks like today from the early beginnings there.
I will say that lawn company crashed and burned, by the way. So I did 20 grand. That was the peak. And then the next year, the guy stole my truck and all my tools. And the other guy he did a hit and run. And then he didn't stop. He ran. So I had to go drive through the neighborhood to find the guy he hit and then go in and apologize and bring the employee. I was like, dude, you can't hit and run. They're going to have your driver's license. And sure enough, they did, but it helped him out. But it was a shit show. And
lessons, though.
Great lessons. That's my lesson for your people. They should just do stuff and fail. Like when you're young, you should just go, fail. Like nothing can kill you at 20 or 21 or 22 or 23 or 24 or 16 or whatever. Just go, because every mistake you make, the sooner you make it, you probably won't make that one again. And so you really should be like a mistake making machine. But my first house I bought was in Austin, Texas. And I bought it in 95 for $77,000. I moved in for a year and then I didn't like living in it. So I rented an apartment and I turned it into a rental. So that became my first investment property. I own it today, free and clear, and it's worth $500,000. So it's probably 550 actually. So I put 20 grand down. And then I was just going to try to get 10 homes and pay them all off. But I went to this Money Matters seminar in 2000-ish. By now my house is worth like 170 or 160 or something. And in 5 years, I mean, Austin's been booming. So it's like doubled in 5 years, maybe a little bit less. So, and this guy says you should have positive leverage. So I learned the difference between positive leverage and negative leverage. I guess the other thing for your listeners is there's always people that know more than you. Just keep, especially when you're younger, just keep hanging out with them and paying attention to them. And the reason I keep talking about integrity, because a lot of times people talk about integrity or crooks, but when I talk about integrity, what I mean is if you listen internally and you try to align yourself with what's right and what's true, and the reason I'm obsessed with transparency is because you'll start noticing that in other people. And if you don't have that alignment with yourself, you'll fall for a lot of stuff because you're too busy trying to look good. So when someone else is looking good, you kind of resonate with that and you fall for it. Like I played golf with a guy the other day that I knew gotten into some trouble with embezzlement. And but he'd recovered. It was kind of a goofy deal. He was in a hard time.
I think I invested with that guy. I'm joking.
Yeah, right. There's more than one of them out there. It's happened to me too. But he's like on the first tee sheet, and he used to be a great golfer. I hadn't seen him in forever. And he's like, man, I haven't broken 80 in like 6 months or since I started up again after my injury. And then he's playing really well. I'm playing really well. I shot one over on the front nine, but he was playing really well. And then around the fourth hole, he goes, oh yeah, I just broke 80 for the first time last week. So then like those two things resonate. I'm like, oh, well, you're just out of integrity because what you said on the first tee, which by the way, he's probably just setting it up because he thought he might play bad. So he's kind of like, maybe it was insecurity, but whatever it is, then on the fourth hole, he's like, oh, I shot 80 last week, but that was the first time in a while. Where you just lied. I'm wondering if you're a redeemed human and in the first hour of hanging out with you, you've told an untruth. And that's the kind of little things that I think I try to pay attention to in finding out. That's why I try to keep my integrity. So if I'm with you, I would say, I just try to tell you, yeah, like she's trying to have sex with me. And then I did have sex with her and I don't feel good about it, but I did. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, I resisted. I was like a super strong guy. And I just said, no, a married woman put pressure on me and I had sex out of wedlock for her. Like it broke her covenant. So I think you've just got to be that kind of ruthless honest. It also really matters in business because you can really delude yourself in business with how well you're doing, or you can delude yourself in buying a property. Because you can look at it and go like, oh, my rents are $2,000 a month. That's $24,000 a year. And my overhead's going to be 18. But you're not really like factoring in a month of vacancy or if an AC goes out. And so I think people do this a lot where they fool themselves. I think you got to go through life as a cynical optimist. So you're looking for the best, but you're expecting the worst. And I try to do that all the time and like be really like, what's worst case scenario? When I'm talking to investors now, I also tell them like, kind of here's the average of what happens. Here's what we expect to happen. And here's the worst case that could happen. And I think people trust me more because I'm willing to do that. I'm trying to coach a young guy right now who keeps going to the best case outcome, which is true because we have had those best cases. But I'm like, you've got to, in my opinion, you have to tell people like the scale of what's possible. I think it resonates more with their authenticity. Now you can fool people because a lot of people like to be fooled, right? And that's fine too. But I don't really like to play it that way. I'd rather be straight up. Maybe I grow slower, but more solid because of that. So then that Money Matters seminar I'm at in Chicago, the guy says you should refi your property and anytime you can borrow money and it gives you a higher rate of return on equity than if you didn't borrow money, that's positive leverage. If your rate of return goes down with leverage, that's negative leverage, so positive leverage. So I refied that property in Austin, took out 60 grand and bought 3 homes in Lubbock. Now in hindsight, I should have just brought another house in Austin. There's another example of honesty. I'm going to tell you a story that's done really well for me, but in reality, I should just bought another house in Austin. I'd have made more money. But instead, I bought 3 homes in Lubbock, and they got paid off. I put them on 15-year notes, and so this was 2000. They were paid off by 2016, and now that one home I bought plus those 3 homes, that's about $1 million, and it cash flows, I don't know, about $40,000 a year net after all expenses now. So that's from 20 grand over a long period of time. This 20 years turned into $1 million. That's generating $40,000 a year free cash. That's just what's possible in real estate, right? So I'm all out for opening franchises. So I'm just franchise after franchise. I get up to 15 and I bought a few properties. So now it's like 2005, 2006. I probably had 8 rental properties. I bought a duplex in Austin. Should have bought all of them, but I bought one. This bits and pieces here. Never sold a single house I've lived in, by the way. I've never sold a residence that I've lived in to this point. I tried to sell one but I couldn't get it sold right before COVID. It ended up making me an extra $600,000 because it didn't sell. So I've got 8 homes and I got 15 franchises. 06, I'm making like 3.6 million a year. I'm killing it. Like I'm, 39 years old at that point and I'm just loaded. And then the crash comes. I was pricing jets. Thank God I didn't buy one. So then the crash comes. Boom, it takes me down. And my income goes down 60%. So I'm making 1.7 million by 2008, maybe. I can't exactly remember. And then I stabilize. So I'm like, oh, okay, we've let some people go. I regret letting 1 or 2 people go. I should have probably been more faithful to people, but I was just scared. So I had a couple of receptionists that I didn't think I needed. I let them go. In hindsight, I kind of wish I'd kept them around because they were actually good people. But I was just scared. So I let them go. And then we were cutting expenses, cutting all this, cutting junk. And the good thing about our business is a lot of the bonuses the team leaders make are based on profits. So when profits goes down, my expenses go down. And then a lot of my expenses are taxes. So when that goes down, that comes down too. So then I start looking around in 09 for places to invest with Pat and Tim. We've got this brotherhood. So that's a good thing about a mastermind is like you can talk constantly about where you are in the market. Like we could right now be about near the bottom or it could go further. Like I think it's very interesting because it's kind of been mediocre for a couple of years. It was booming in COVID because they sucked forward all of the future profits by printing $6 trillion and nobody can, it's simple. And then now it's bottomed out. And then if they cut rates more, it'll go back up. But if inflation peaks back, its head back up again and they raise rates, we're all screwed again. Or if there's a big war, which is another possibility. So I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, I've stabilized. I got like 3 million or 4 million bucks saved up or, because I was just doing franchise, like keeping a lot of cash. And I went ahead and found a company that was buying distressed homes. And I invested 2.9 million with them, a little at first, like 100 grand, then 200 grand. And then it did really well, like 30% return. So I went ahead and put in 2.9 million with them. And I said, and they were buying bulk homes. And I said to them, hey, I want to buy a quarter of your company. And we got all the way through all the due diligence and I had my team in. And then it turned out that they owed somebody 800 grand that they hadn't disclosed to me. And the reason, because I wanted to switch it from buying and flipping to holding a whole bunch of homes.
Right.
But they didn't have the capacity to do that because they had to service this $800,000 note. So I said, oh, well, I'm out. I'm going to go do it myself. And I kind of like got all their information when I was going to buy it. And so I went and did it, which again, you can talk about whether that's integrity or not. But my original intention was just to buy it. We didn't have any non-competes or non-disclosures. But I just started my own little team with my own money and started buying bulk homes. And we got all up to, we bought 350 homes in, I think, 2013. And so I would flip everything that wasn't a 24 cap. Isn't that insane? So like if I could buy something gross, so I'd buy something for 40,000 and it would
Were these all single family?
Huh?
Were these all single family? Were these all single family?
All single family, some duplexes, but pretty much all things. There were tapes. So Fannie Mae would sell a tape of 20 homes. Your first 10 that you'd sell, you'd think you were killing it. And then your next 5 would be okay. And then the bottom 5, you'd have to be given money to get rid of them. They were like crap. There's like dead bodies in them, meth labs, different things. But in that 20 that I'd buy or whatever, I would take the ones that had that if it was 40 grand and I could rent it for 800 a month, I would keep that one. So I ended up building a portfolio of 100 homes, bought and sold about 800. In hindsight, I wished I'd kept 200. And then the market just disappeared on me in 2013 when all the funds came in. Like I was gearing up to buy 1,000 homes and starting to raise a little bit of money from other people. And it literally just disappeared.
That is unbelievable. So you said you just started to raise a little bit of capital, but that 100 homes was basically your capital?
Yeah, because back then, I mean, they would sell like a tape. Let's say it was 40,000 per home and it was 20 homes, it'd be 800 grand. Like I had that money. So I was using my money. And then I started running out of my money.
Were you using leverage to buy those or were you just buying them for cash?
You bought them all cash and then you would back lever them if they were good. And then I was also buying individually because if you remember, the market was dead, right? No one was buying anything in 2012, 2013. So in that same area where I got some of these from the tapes, like South Haven, Mississippi, I ended up buying like 40 homes there. These homes were selling for 40, then it went to 50, but they were still renting for 800 a month and sometimes 1,000 a month. So they're still effectively pretty close to a 24 gross cap. And so I just kept, buying those and adding them to my portfolio. And then I started wanting to raise money and I got into raising money.
So David, we had Andrew on the call. I think so. What's your portfolio look like now? You still have a lot of single family houses. You also have
Cushman.
Cushman.
Okay. So I kept those 100 and I've added to them, and I probably got 140 homes in that portfolio. And I bet they're worth, I mean, I also have in about 20 of them, I'm in partnership with Mucha Stegi, if you guys know Aaron. So we bought some together. And then I started a fund. So as soon as I started a fund, I stopped buying for myself. I only bought for the fund. So my fund, which is on its third, we're raising 200 million for our third fund, bought probably 800 homes as well, a little bit later in the cycle, so a little bit higher priced. And we're just liquidating a bunch of those, but we've done really well. Even through the crash, we're still going to be about 15% net IRR to investors in fund one. If it continues the way it is, and fund two will probably be a little bit better. My 14 in fund one, maybe 15 in fund two, and then fund three should be better. But I have that portfolio of like 140 homes, maybe 20 owned with Aaron, so maybe 120 owned by myself. And I bet those are worth on average 150 a piece right now. I mean, it's hard to say because they're still pretty crappy, some of them, but they're all rented. I got a guy that manages it for me. I put in an 8-year fixed 4.5% interest rate like a little while ago, so I don't have to sell anything or deal with it till 2031. And if I did, I'd have a prepayment penalty. So it's just kind of like locked in a little box. So that's that. I still love single family homes. That's why you have so much passion on it, because that's where I got my teeth cut. And then with Cushman, I've got, I don't know, maybe 1,500 doors. I don't exactly know, but they're all run by him, so I trust him. I just put money in every deal he does. And I have a small piece of the GP too, so I get a little bit of a kicker on that. And then I started doing distressed debt, and then I bought some office buildings for my real estate companies, and I own little weird stuff because sometimes with the debt, I'd end up with a property. So I own like a duplex up in New Jersey and some weird stuff all around the country. I had a big industrial warehouse in California, but I sold it right at the end of COVID. I had 3 beachfront properties in Cinnamon Beach that I built and bought, but I sold all of those right before the market crashed. That was Matt King's doing, so I'm very happy that he made me sell them, because I probably am. I'm generally not a seller. I generally like to buy and hold. Then I've got the offices. So I got the private equity firm and the offices, and then my portfolio of real estate. I can't tell you exactly how much I have because I kind of lost interest in it, Travis, in a weird way. But I do have this theory is you plant trees and manage orchards. So what I mean by that is whenever you buy an investment, you pay a lot of attention to it. It's like planting a tree. It's like digging a hole in the dirt, putting the tree in, little baby tree that's going to grow up and be a fruit tree for you. You put fertilizer around it, you cover it with earth, and you nurture it. You water it every day, you pay attention to it. So that's like doing a property investment. You buy a home, either you're going to flip it or keep it. If you're going to keep it or flip it, either way. If you're going to flip it, you put money into it and try to make it look prettier so you can get more money to buy more trees. If you're going to keep it, and I believe you should kind of flip 2 to keep 1. That's what I tried to do because I didn't have the capital to keep them all. But I would try to keep the ones that definitely caught positive cash flowed. Even after vacancy and even after repairs. So those are the ones I wanted, which is really hard today with 8% interest, right? So it's a lot harder than it used to be. And then you build an orchard. So suddenly I have 140 homes. Guess what? I don't even know a single tenant. I couldn't tell you an address off the top of my head. I don't manage them. I have a guy that works for me that manages all the managers. So we have 140 local property managers. And then we have a guy that manages all those managers. I don't even talk to him anymore. There was a time when I was more curious. About 7 years ago, I kind of shifted fully towards family, like I described to you. I used to be on it every day, paying attention to stuff all the time. I had a bunch of reports designed. I have them all on Google Drive so I could go look at them even now, but I just haven't. But it's managed by Danny. I trust Danny. I love Danny. And he's got triplets, if you can believe that. They're all 13 now. He's been with me for a long time. And Danny just runs that. I called him the other day. I'm like, hey, when did we last do a valuation on those homes? He's like, it's been a couple of years. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe we should just do another valuation. He said he'd get back to me, but he hasn't gotten back to me. Then I asked him, how's the cash flow? And he goes, it's not that good. I mean, it's like we have the capital expenses, so we're not losing any money, and we keep some money, but a lot of it just goes back in because these are older, crappy properties. So we have capital repairs and stuff like that. But we got really good appreciation. Our basis is incredibly low. And I tell my wife, if I got killed, you should just keep those properties because they're going to throw off like 60, 70 grand a year. And that's a pretty easy way to live. I used to tell her that. She's kind of gotten spoiled now. So we might have to figure out a higher way of making her money. So that the single family is where I cut my teeth. That's what I love. And then the other thing is finding really good people. So you start off working on yourself, working on your work ethic, working on your scripts and dialogues, working on your knowledge, which means getting rid of, one of my favorite sayings is it's not what you know that hurts you. It's what you know that ain't so, right? So that's an old saying. It's not what you know that hurts you. It's what you know that ain't so. So that's emptying out those structures that don't serve you and getting rid of the belief systems that aren't right. Like one of your belief systems is many people have this, like, I invest with people I like. Well, that's a mistake. There's a lot of really warm, charming people actually aren't that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't invest in charming people. I'm saying that should not be one of your stipulations. Because warm, charming people generally aren't that good at details. That's kind of like a thing you could almost, not always, but a lot of times if you're charming, unless they have operators under them, they're not going to be good at the details. So
yeah, you invest with people you like, and then they, mess up, and then you don't like them so much. So.
That's right. So it's like, so it starts on you, and then it becomes others. It's all about other people for me now. Like, who's in my world? How talented are they? What kind of relationship we have? When you build 12 or 15 franchises, each one has a manager, and those franchises were only as good as the people. When I started doing multifamily with Cushman, our first deal went really, really bad. So I could have quit on him, but I liked him. I thought he had honor and integrity. I felt like he was a good person. So even though I lost $540,000 in the last one, I just hung in with him and I kept going because I didn't believe he was a bad person. I just think we got in a bad deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly. We've had Andrew Cushman on the show. We've also had Pat Hyman on the show. So.
Yeah, Pat Hyman's another one, just loyal. Pat's been a great role model for me because we held each other accountable, and he's so brutal about accountability. And that's a thing we haven't talked about either, is accountability and the importance of having a coach or someone who doesn't just make you feel good, but just tells you where you're on and where you're off. But anyway, Cushman I hung in there with, and now he's made me all that money back and more. One day he actually called me and he said, "Hey, today's the day." I'm like, "What's the day?" He goes, "Today I made you $560,000 back in total." He'd been tracking after the loss. As the kind of guy he is, he'd been tracking the returns I'd made on all my investments. He says, "We're whole again now. And now it's all just gravy." And that was a lot of years ago. So that shows you the kind of guy he is.
Let's talk about accountability a little bit. I know that's an important thing in your life and Pat Hyben's life. And I know that's one of the pillars of GoBundance. If you wouldn't mind speaking to GoBundance a little bit. I mean, it's the first mastermind that I ever joined, 6 years ago. It's had a huge impact in my life. And obviously accountability is one of those pillars, but why don't you speak to how GoBundance grew from you and Pat being accountability partners to 1,000-member tribe that it is today?
Well, we had a seminar taught by a guy called Fred Gross, who wrote a book that's probably out of print called Black Belt of the Mind, but I think it's a really good book and I always promote it. And Fred Gross was one of my first mentors. I'm very grateful for him. And in that meeting, he said, "Okay, find someone in this room. They're going to be your accountability coach. And the price you're going to pay them is you're going to be their accountability coach." So I looked across the room and there was only one other young guy there, and I gave him the nod and he gave me the man nod, and we came over and we became buddies and we became accountability partners. And, he has been like, accountability requires transparency and authenticity, right? So I can't hold you accountable if I say, "Hey, you got to go to the gym and work out and do 100 push-ups." And you're like, "Oh, I did it," but you actually didn't. Right. So that's like, that's where I keep going back in this circle of like, people are always trying to bullshit other people and then themselves, and I do it too. Like, I'm not innocent of it. If I walk into a party and there's some really rich guy there and I get a little nervous, I'm like, "Oh, like I have Elon Musk. Oh yeah, I've got a lot going on. I'm a really successful guy." Like, I get nervous. You want to impress people. It's just very human to be that way. But if you live your life from that place, you're screwed because you'll constantly blow your own horn. And I see it all the time. I mean, I got family members that do it, or just like my dad used to do this a little bit. He just always talked big, and he was a great man. He didn't need to do that, but he still did it. Does that make sense? So then I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be hypocritical. I don't want to be like full. So I'm going to try to live as true as I can. And then I met Pat. Pat's almost autistic. He's on the scale of the spectrum, but he loves to be real too. So the two of us, I tell him I made $1 million. He's like, "Send me your tax returns." I don't believe you. So I'd have to send him my tax returns. And I'd say, "Well, send me your tax return." So he'd send me his tax return. And our accountability that was taught by this guy, Fred Gross, was so authentic that when we got together, we'd do our systolic, diastolic. We'd go to get the heart monitor. We just test all these things, our body fat. That we were just trying to live a very transparent life. And what that created in me was, we'd meet quarterly. Is right before that, a month before that meeting, I'm going to the gym. I'm working out. I'm trying to get my systolic calm. I'm trying to get my body fat down because I want to look good to my guys, because I still got that desire to look good. But I know with them, I can't fake it. It's got to be real. So we started doing this for each other and then it was just us. And in that class, a lot of people tried to hook up with us, but a lot of people get in accountability. They just become friends. They just talk nicely to each other. "Oh, how would you think of the game? Oh, how's your wife? Oh, my wife's a bitch." I don't know, like this, but they're not really helping each other because they're just being a friend. You don't need a friend. You need an accountability coach. And if the friendship comes from that, great. But if it doesn't, there's 1 million people in your life already that'll just talk to you at a cocktail party. Every parent at your kid's school, all these people, but very few people like, let's keep it real. Are you on track? Are you saving money? Are you investing money? Do you have free cash flow from that money? Are you making good investments or stupid investments? if you made a stupid investment, what did you learn from that? And these are the kind of conversations we'd have. And people would join in with us and then they'd fall by the wayside because they weren't willing to live with that level of accountability and transparency, because we'd have things you had to do to be on the next call. Like, the other thing Fred taught us was you can change your life by changing 3 things in a quarter. So it wasn't like a crazy amount of goals. It'd be like, make more calls, go to the gym more, whatever it is. Pick 3 things and then commit to do that over 90 days. And Pat and I hold each other accountable to that with sometimes some pretty rude conversations to each other. Then we met Tim Rode and we were just working and trying to outwork each other. And then we tried to do dollar productive activities. And then we met Tim Rode, who was already semi-retired, and he was tracking the number of days he skied and the number of days he went mountain biking. And he had 18 paychecks coming every month from all these different investments. And we're like, oh, and we joined up with him and he stuck with us. He actually also was willing to do the accountability. He's also probably on the spectrum. Maybe all 3 of us are just autistic kids that came together. But he also was willing to do all that. But he had a whole new outlook. We're like, oh, maybe we should compete on the number of days we take on vacation. So we started doing that. And Pat would always win that. Who could take the most days off? But he also used to win also on the amount of hours worked. So it's interesting. And so then we added number of paychecks, net worth, and then we were like, let's just start going to seminars together. And then we're like, well, we're bored of seminars. Let's go to let's go to Norway and kayak down the river, or let's go somewhere crazy that we've never been before, the Tomatina. Let's walk on the Camino de Santiago. So we added in the bucket list adventures, and we've been doing all this for a long time. Like for me and Pat, 15 years before we started GoBundance. And then for me and Tim, 10 years. And then all of a sudden we were like, well, let's just invite more people. We're so sick of each other's stories. We know all the stories. Let's just get new people in. We invited 11 people to Steamboat. One of them was Rock Thomas, and Rock was like a Tony Robbins guy. And he's like, you guys have something here. The world needs this. And that was the beginning of the creation of GoBundance. But it's built around authenticity, transparency, and accountability, and men standing for men to be better versions of themselves tomorrow than today. And if we can keep that culture alive of the authenticity and the transparency, which leads to the accountability, this tribe will kick ass forever, no matter what the size. And if we lose that, and there's always going to be a percentage of people that are going to bullshit, by the way. That's just the way it is. But if that starts winning, then the tribe loses its value to the members.
There's a lot of power to transparency. I mean, I remember the first time I met you, you probably don't remember this, but hey, I'm David. What's your net worth? I'm like, I was new to GoBundance, but that's the one of the people are very transparent and open in GoBundance, and they just talk about it freely. And there's this sort of notion that you can't talk about your net worth or your wealth, that, money is supposed to be kept a secret. And it was very refreshing to me. And I think a lot of people grow from being first transparent and genuine, and then being accountable to other people. And so, GoBundance has been life-changing for all of us as well. So
that's so good to hear. When you go to Vegas, most people talk about their winnings. You talked a couple times about some losses you made. If you'll keep learning from that, not just talk about it to be in a pity party, but to say, what did I do wrong? Okay, I really like the guy. Did you ever get a warning when you made that investment? Was your intuition ever maybe not, or were you just fully in?
Firework red flags. I was like, I should not do this. What am my gut said absolutely no. I kind of got bullied into it with this group mentality. Anyway,
that's the thing right there. That's the lesson. I've made a bunch of bad investments where my being told me no. One time, this girl I just met was putting in $2 million. I'm like, well, I'm a big hitter. I'm going to put in $2 million too. And I liked her. I respected her a lot. In hindsight, she didn't know what the hell she was doing either, because we both lost our $2 million. But she was clever enough actually to figure something out where she got paid some of it back and I didn't. But it was interesting because my intuition was saying, don't do it. Like this guy, the CEO of that company, wearing gold chain with his initials on it. I'm like, that's like a red flag. You shouldn't invest with a guy running a tech company that's got his initials on it.
This guy said, I'm a Christian. You should invest with me. So
there you go.
I'm a Christian, great, whatever. But when someone says that, you're like, anyway.
As a flag.
So I think that's the lesson. If you talk about that, you'll learn. If you think you're a victim, or if you don't talk about it and it never happened, you don't learn. So that's the goal of GoBundance, is to create that culture where we
take
learn.
Accountability. Like I tell people, these people, they defrauded, they took money, but at the end of the day, it's my mistake. I made the investment. And I think it's very freeing for people to own their successes, which is great. That's easy, but own your mistakes and take 100% accountability. And I think that's a common trait. Anybody that you meet that's incredibly successful, and I would put you in this group, obviously, they take 100% accountability. Not once have I heard you on this call say, I invested these people, they took my money. You're like, I made that bad investment. That was me. And I think people that have that trait will go very far in life.
I heard a quote once that outside betrayal usually starts with inside betrayal. So if you get betrayed by anybody, a girl, a business, there's usually a little moment where you betrayed part of yourself.
Yeah. Oof. Yep. And don't get emotionally tied to it. We just feel like it happened, learn from it. I love it. Well, this has been an awesome. Any other questions for Mitch or Gabe? I know we always get out of here with one final question. Anything from you guys?
I just want to thank you, David, for all you've done. I mean, like I've said a couple of times, GoBundance has been a huge part of my life. And just like you've said, and these guys have said, the accountability piece, the transparency piece. I used to not know how to describe GoBundance. Now I say it's a group of high net worth men that care about more than just money. It's simple, and it's what I've got out of it, but I think about the first event I ever went to, that transparency piece. It was, I was in a room full of like 180 really successful men that were completely okay sharing about their wins, but also their challenges. Like everybody I met was like, hey, I'm kicking ass here. Like my business is kicking ass, but I'm struggling in my relationship, or my relationship's great, but I'm really struggling on my health. And I think getting around people like that is so important. And I know you didn't intentionally, at least originally, start GoBundance as a business or as this thing to grow. But because of the authenticness, because of the vulnerability, it's naturally grown into something super impactful for, I know, all of us on this call and many other people we've had as guests and listeners on the pod as well. So I appreciate, that level of contribution that just by you and Pat being accountability partners have created something quite amazing. And I have a lot of gratitude for that.
Thanks, Gabe. It feels really good to hear that. It's almost like a hand of God company. Honestly, I feel like there's something behind it that's not us. Like it just filled a spot, and it's been really fun and an honor to be a part of it.
Well, I'll echo that, because in a weird way, I feel like I'm a part of your story because I'm a part of GoBundance. So like you tell your story, you tell these people, and then I met this person, and this person was like, "Whoa, you got something here," all these things, and I'm like over here getting chills because I'm like, that affects my life, man. Like I've been with you guys for 4 years. And I'm like, I just have a lot of gratitude toward that, because it's changed everything for me. So it's pretty cool listening to where it came from. And I'm so glad that like your story, it happened like it happened. I mean, I'm selfishly, I'm like, GoBundance is a big part of my life. So anyway,
thanks,
a lot of gratitude, man.
I appreciate hearing that.
David, I've got a good question. We love this question. We ask everybody on the podcast. It's a hypothetical. All right. You're sitting on your buddy's couch. You've lost everything, all your net worth, all your money, all your contacts, your network as well. But you haven't lost your experience. You still have your experience. You still have your, everything you've gone through, knowledge, experience, stories, all the things. What do you do? What does your next couple weeks look like? Your next 30 days look like to go build something that you can be proud of? To go build a real estate portfolio, go build your net worth, your cash flow.
I think the first thing I would do is go somewhere beautiful and somewhere inspiring. It could be a coffee shop, but it could be a hotel lobby or something that just had some stature to it and something that felt resonant with my energy. And I would start working on a vision. I would get a piece of paper. If I didn't have any money, I'd go to the front desk and ask for a couple pieces of blank paper. And I'd start noodling on where I wanted to be in 10 years. And I'd think about, I'm 57, so then I'd be 67. And what do I want the next 10 years to look like? And I'd write it down and I'd categorize it by business, income, health, people I want to hang out with. And I would crystallize that vision into something that felt exciting to me, like something I thought I could breathe life into. That would be my first step. And then I would take that and I would hang it on my bathroom mirror where I brushed my teeth, and I'd read it and I would start living into that vision, that dream that I'd created for myself. And part of me kind of sounds exciting. If I didn't have kids, I'd be like, let's go. But I don't want to lose my kids because you said I lost my contacts. But
we can have your kids. You can have your kids.
You can have your kids. You can have your kids. Okay. We're not that mean.
There is some excitement to that, isn't there, though? Because it's like, and I read on your website, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it's like, it's not how much money you make or your net worth, but like who you become in the journey, something like that. I'm not going to get it right, but like I can tell that that's the way you live, because like right away you're like, I can see some excitement there. You're like, wait, that would be kind of a cool adventure, right? So
I don't want to do it. I want to test God. I like my life, but it would be fun.
Yeah. I get you.
You create the vision, and then you get people to buy into the vision. So then I'd take my knowledge and I'd find younger guys that were fired up but didn't quite have the vision. Like when I was a kid, I felt like a spaceship without a pilot. Do you guys ever feel like that? Like a jet without a pilot, like, but you're burning all this energy. I would go find those guys and I'd help them like harness that energy, and I'd create an opportunity and we'd build something together. It'd be awesome. I would enjoy doing that, but I'm not going to tempt fate and say,
I got you.
Love it. Well, Dave, thank you for being on. Genuinely appreciate you.
yeah, it's great. Good to be with you guys.
A lot of gold there. Thank you.
A lot of love and respect. Thank you guys.